So we welcome, these are all Rotarians, all part of the Rotary Club of World Disability, now Sigamoni officially. You are like 10 minutes a member, so welcome. And I'm going to talk to you all in your alphabetical order, starting with your first name. So that brings us to us, Angie. And Angie, you you have written a book, co-authored, I guess, with a few other people, but you can tell us more about it. It's called Stories, Statistics, and Solutions. So why don't you, if you can, give us about 5-minute introduction on your book, and we'll come ask some specific questions. Go ahead, Angie.
Okay, thank you. Well, I want to welcome my co-author, editor of this book, Dr. Luke Bobo, who is on today and is, I see, already making connections. I'm so delighted you could join us. And I want to talk about our book today. It is Stories, Statistics, Solutions. I think you have an image of it on the flyer for this meeting. So I want to ask everyone today if they know the answer to this question. What is it that American faith leaders must do for their worshipers with disabilities? Does anyone know? You can say it. You can type it in the chat if you know, and I'll look in the chat.
Pray for them. One thing is to continue praying for them.
Continue praying for them, yes, because that actually, Dr. Doreen, they have no rights in their churches, synagogues, or places of worship. We have no rights in the United States to require those places of worship to do anything for us, even though in other countries, there is that right written in civil law, in the United Kingdom in particular. Most other countries may not even have a law about civil rights for their whole population or address those in churches. So the Americans with Disabilities Act doesn't force our churches or houses of worship to accommodate their parishioners, but God does require us to accommodate other people. So in all faiths, Judaism, Christianity, we're instructed to do what? Love our neighbor as ourselves. And how do we love a person with disabilities or access needs? We accommodate them, of course. So that's what Dr. Luke Bobo and I wrote this book about, the right of all believers to worship with dignity and with their access needs met. And this book stresses God's imperative on us to meet those needs in churches and places of worship. The book's title, Stories, Statistics, Solution, towards understanding and including people with disabilities in faith communities, is very wordy, yes, but it's easily searched with just 3 words: stories, statistics, solutions. Put them in any search engine and our book comes up first. So the first part deals with my and 7 other people's stories of how we, with a variety of disabilities, are included and maybe not included so well in our churches. I will show you, if you can see that on the screen, my picture is in there and my story as well. Each story shows some inclusion, but also shows that there's much more to do to help people with disabilities to worship, connect, and participate in their congregations. The next part, statistics on physical, sensory, and mental health disabilities of Americans, tells us basically who's in the pews and who we have to address and include better. Then solutions shows us how to measure a congregation's needs, to assess their needs. Because why? Asking folks what they need is always a good idea instead of doing what we think they need and expecting them to be thankful for something that they may not be able to use. So we give ideas of how to help folks with many disabilities worship and be included in all the activities of their congregation, even be a part of the leadership. And then how do we meet folks with disabilities' needs to worship and participate and lead overall? We lay aside our ableism and realize the dignity in each person doing things the way God calls them to, not as we expect them to. Some people can't hear and sign what they say. Other people, like me, can't hear and don't sign. We need to read the text or captions like I'm doing right now in this meeting. So the book's final call to action is to use the solutions and anticipate the needs of those who might show up in your community or congregation. This is what loving our neighbor is all about, to plan and be ready to welcome anyone regardless of their abilities. And that's what this book can help you and your congregation do. So again, it's available on Amazon and other online booksellers. You can use those 3 words, stories, statistics, solutions, to search for it. And I encourage you to give it a look. And hopefully you will find it helpful in becoming a more welcoming, more accessible congregation, and maybe even a more welcoming, accessible, loving you. I say to that, so be it, and amen.
Thank you, Angie. It's really sounds like a good read, and the more that I have been doing this, the more I learned that disability rights, of course, is in every aspect of our life, every aspect, and we should be looking at it, and certainly in the religious aspects, it certainly should be there. I'm going to turn to the next in line alphabetically, Dr. Doreen. If you could tell us about your book, which I have read, and I love the illustrations and all of it. It's a children's book, right? It's called Sundiata. You pronounce it for me. Go ahead, Doreen.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. It is called Sundiata, the Self-Determined King. Again, good morning. Just so inspired with every speaker that has spoken. Every time I come to the meetings, again, it's like I come back out of it more inspired to do more, and just want to welcome our new colleagues to the club. So I'm Doreen Myrie. I am in the United States. I am a special education professor, teacher educator. So my students are going to be special ed teachers, and some are graduate students that are continuing with their education in teaching and working with students with disabilities. I am a children's writer as well. I have actually been writing manuscripts for a long time for kids, but I was so intimidated by the publishing process. And so I just, kept on putting that aside. I didn't, I was afraid to publish, but I said, I really think that my stories should be put out there because I'm writing them for a reason. I'm writing them for children, and I'm writing to promote inclusion and acceptance and celebrating and being around people with disabilities and appreciating them and learning from them as well. So my work.
Due tomorrow.
So, when you read the book, if you get a chance to, you will see that the work that I do in disabilities, my cultural background, my love of history and love of stories. You could see all that in the story. Like I said, I'm a special education professor at Jackson State University, but I was a special ed teacher for 18 years, teaching young children. And I noticed when I was a teacher that, my library, my classroom library and the school library, it's like, all the books, my students, I'll be reading to my students, but my little students didn't see themselves in the stories. They didn't have characters that they could relate to, when I was a teacher. I think now it's getting better, but, so that used to be very frustrating for me because I thought, I don't want my little kids to just be reading stories about other people. I want them to read stories that, they can see themselves in and, be encouraged and also be empowered that, they bring something to the table that we can all learn from and appreciate. And not just for the kids with disabilities, but I also wanted other kids without disabilities, and then even grown-ups, but especially because my population was children. I wanted to use children's literature. I thought, if we're going to be promoting generations that are going to be accepting and have that inclusive spirit, I really think that we should start when they're young, with things that they can relate to, and children's books, because that is something that they see in school, in the library. So when they're reading stories about people with disabilities and their strengths and talents and that they bring to the table, then that will just normalize that we all belong and we all have something to bring to the table. And so, but like I said, I would write these stories and put them aside, and I just didn't publish. And so I said, okay, I'm going to start publishing. So this is my first published one, Sundiata, the Self-Determined King, and there are others that are in different phases in press, which I look forward to sharing with everyone. But Sundiata is actually a real life, I should say, real life person that lived in Mali in the 16th century. So here, that's where my love of history also, comes in. But when I was a child in Malawi in 4th grade, we call it Standard 4 there. When I was about 8 years old, I remember learning in my history class about a king that had a disability, that was struggling, and how he was looked down upon and doubted. And I never forgot that story. That image from that textbook that I read, it never left my mind. And so, I just kept on thinking, wow, what a wonderful story, that it's somebody that kids also learn about, especially in African history. We learn about Sundiata, and I thought, well, that's somebody that that might also spark more interest, because it's a name that kids might have heard in history, and also, of course, showing appreciation for diverse cultures that are, sometimes we don't always hear about, and the histories behind them. And so that's where the idea of writing Sundiata came in. But it's a story that talks about Sundiata, how he was born weak, and how, with the encouragement of his mother and with his own self-determination, resilience, believing in himself, and trying, he became one of the greatest kings in African history. So when you get a chance to read it, I think that you might be really curious to probably learn more about him, because he's just a very fascinating character. And the illustrator that worked on my book, I really appreciate the fact that he saw and valued the meaning of the book, and why it should be out there, and why it's important to, appeal to the young kids, and of course to grown-ups too. But to get their interest, to read the story and see that, wow, people with disabilities are just like everybody else. They bring talents and gifts to the table, that we should work with them and learn from them, and sit alongside them and advocate for them. So that is why I thought I should share my work. But thank you so much for listening to my rambling. I'm going to put in the chat the link to my book if you're interested in getting it. And if you do get it for yourself and for the little people that are in your families, or grandkids or whoever, I would really love to know what they thought about it, because I find that I learn from people from the way that the kind of feedback they give me about the story. It encourages me to write more, and to also just really keep on with other ideas on inclusivity using children's literature. Thank you so much for listening.
Great. Thank you very much. I didn't realize it was a real character. My bad for that. I thought it was a fictitious character, and so now I'm going to go back and read it again. But I loved the book when I read it. And so next in line, alphabetically, is Dr. Martha. Dr. Martha, I think your book too is written in a level for children. Is that true? It's called You're gonna have to tell me how to pronounce it, because I don't want to pronounce it wrong. So go ahead, Dr. Martha.
Astrosita.
Oh, there you go. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me here and for giving me the opportunity to talk about my baby, my book. And I call my baby because it took me 9 months to write it. It was during the pandemic. I always wanted to write a book of science for children. It was always in my mind. I am a medical doctor, Mexican medical doctor, and I always wanted to explain children how the human body works. So this was my opportunity. So everything started when I took my 3-year-old grandchild to the restroom, and he asked me, "Grandma, where does pee come from?" That was my idea. Okay, if he's asking, where is the pee coming from, then I can talk about the kidneys and the water we drink, etc. So that was my idea. So finally, I had all the time to write my book. My book's name is Astrosita. Astrosita comes from the name of a brain cell that it's called astrocyte. In the brain, we have structures and we have main cells to keep every organ, every part in place. The name of those cells are astrocytes. Okay, well, my main character is a female character, and her name is Astrosita. Astrosita, that I love how it looks. Look, this is Astrosita. She tells the story of everything. For example, I have very simple chapters. Only 5 chapters. From water to pee, from food to poop. A good sleep helps the brain. Then journey into the world of senses. And the last one, which is my favorite one, how do arms and legs work? And then I had the opportunity to talk about motor neurons. We, polio survivors, had problems with or have still problems with the motor neurons, because those are the structures that were affected by polio, and after years with the post-polio syndrome, again, the motor neurons are affected. So my last chapter is about how do arms and legs work. So I had the opportunity to explain in a very, very simple way how motor neurons work. My proofreaders were children. So I wrote my book, and I had my draft and everything, my drafts and everything, but my proofreaders were children. So I told a story to the children. If they understood the topic, it was going to be a good chapter. So they were telling me, no, I didn't understand. I don't like that. It's very boring, or that's exciting. So I took their opinion to write every chapter. It's a bilingual book. So half of the book is English and half of the book is Spanish. It is available in Amazon, and all the royalties are given to the Polio Mexico group, not the new one. We just started a new Polio Mexico support group, not to that one. We had an old support group for polio survivors in Mexico. All the royalties, I gave all the royalties to that group. And I say all the royalties, but it's not a lot of money. Sometimes it is $14 per month, sometimes it is $25, but every single dollar I gave it to the polio support group in Mexico. And now, and this is a commitment in front of all of you, starting now, every single dollar that I receive from the royalties of this book is going to go to the Polio Mexico support group that just started. We have only had, I think, 3-4 meetings, but every single dollar. So if you get the book, I'm not going to go shopping with that money. It's going to go directly to the Polio Mexico group. Okay, more. I want to tell you more about my characters. You know, if I thought, if I have a book of science for children, and the main characters are nice, you know, they are going to like the book. So my main character, let me see if you can see it. This is the motor neuron that is affected in polio and in post-polio syndrome. And you see here, it's the muscle, the muscle. So this is the nerve, this is the muscle. This is the main character, and this that I love, this character also, is Purkinje, which is the cell, the main cell in the cerebellum. So my proofreaders, the children, were telling me more and more about the character. For example, one of my drawings, they like this. They told me, no, Marta, that is boring. We need something with more movement, with more color, with more fun. So, and that is how I wrote every chapter. The goal of this book is for children to learn in very early stage, in the first years, to learn about science in a very fun way. Also, to learn vocabulary, because if they learn vocabulary, then they are going to love reading. Sometimes it is difficult for teachers to make the children love books. But now, if it is, this book is very, very, very fun. You know, it has a lot of fun. So they love to read, and sometimes they get back to the chapters. It is a book that you have to read in several sessions, because it has suggested activities. For example, in this chapter, Journey into the World of Senses, the book has to be read in a garden, and they smell flowers, they smell fruit, they smell the air. You know, they activate their senses. We need the help of an adult, but also the child itself can read the book. A good sleep helps the brain. There is a list. There is a list here, you know, to check mark. Clean pajamas, dark room, etc. You know, I try that list every night with my grandchildren, and it works. So this book educates not only children, but their mothers, you know, to organize the night, to get into a routine. So I love my book. My book is my baby. And I would like you to read it, you know, and I would like to know your opinion. You don't have to buy the book. It's expensive. $32. It's a lot of money because it's bilingual and it's very heavy. So my goal for this coming year is to create 2 books. Only one, the half will be Spanish, the other half will be English. And then I'm going to reduce the price. Also, if you want to have the audiobook or the digital version, it's only $2. So if you read in Amazon the digital version, you're going to spend only $2, and those $2 are going to go to the Polio Mexico group. And I really, really would like you to read it and give me your opinion, because I'm ready to write the next one. And the next one is going to be only about the motor neuron. So I want to talk about post-polio syndrome in this same style with these nice characters. What else should I tell you? Well, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mata. It sounds really fascinating. God bless you for writing such a book. It definitely was needed. And we certainly will. I'm going to download it. I'm going to try to read it in Spanish. And please, everybody, all the authors, put your connections to your where you can get your book on the chat here. So next in line is another children's book, actually written for a child, but I have it sitting on my coffee table. Is Mark Stoddard. Mark.
Hi, Ken. Once again, thank you very much for giving me the platform. My name is Mark Stoddart, and I'm from Scotland in the UK. I'm personally dyslexic, neurodiverse, and I've had quite a struggle with it, and sadly been put through quite a number of things that a child should not be put through. And also when I went to work for different companies, and some of them were American companies as well. So I've tried over there. Well, I'm an artist, a sculptor, a designer, and been doing it for 35 years. And over my 35 years, I've tried to give back to charities all around the world. And I've supported numerous charities around the world. And the last few years, I kind of upped the ante and personally, out my own pocket, funded to build the only dyslexic neurodiverse school in Indonesia that is eco-friendly and carbon neutral. And I've also personally funded to build the only dyslexic neurodiverse school in Kenya that's the only school of its type in Eastern Africa. And I'm also funding training courses in remote parts of Kenya and other parts of Africa. And we're looking at a big project out in India. I'm connected with Dyslexia Scotland and have been for numerous years. And when I lived in London, I was connected with the British Dyslexia Association. I'm a board director of the LDA in America and numerous other charities. So that leads on to the book. It was through with my co-author, Kate McElvery, who works for the Odyssey School in Maryland in America. It took us over a year to do the book. And what we set out to do was, yes, do a book based on the story of my struggles, but try and do it in a fun way that children between the age of 7 and 14 could read. But also take it to another level. And we had 2 top neuroscientists in America go through a section in the book to do with how a dyslexic neurodiverse brain works. We've had people buy the book for they buy it for their children, buy it for their grandchildren, and they read the book and suddenly get a light bulb moment themselves and suddenly realize that they didn't fail school, school failed them. And a grandparent or even a parent, okay, you're not going to suddenly change the whole of their life and the past of their life, but what you will hopefully do, and is happening with the book, is they're suddenly realizing that they didn't fail school, school failed them, and it helps their mental health to suddenly realize, yeah, it wasn't my fault. So it's kind of comes in a different angle with that. The book is called Making a Mark, and I'm called Mark. Discovering the Power of Neurodiverse on a Learning Safari. I do bronze sculptures, as I say, and the sculptures are mostly, I'm known for doing hippo functional art sculptures. So to try and do it in a nice form, we've done one character, I don't know if you can see it, but we've got Mr. Oblivion. And throughout schooling, sadly, they are teachers who are just oblivious to kids and being in school, and with them being dyslexic neurodiverse. And then we got to try and get another angle to it. We obviously have Miss Brill. So you get that one person and one teacher in your life that recognizes your strengths and then helps and teaches you and can totally and utterly change your life. When I went to school down in Sussex, it was about the last 2.5 years of my education, and it came up to about 18 and a half. And the school, we called it Preston College. And Preston College is called Frewin College. Frome College is down in Sussex in England in the UK, and it's the first dyslexic school in the world, and it's been going for over 100 years. The school totally and utterly changed my life. When I went there, how would you put it? I was totally introverted. I wouldn't go on a bus, I wouldn't go on a train, I wouldn't go out, I wouldn't talk to anybody, I had no friends. I'd literally kind of shut down. My father thought that I might be able to do something and go and work for the local council and cut grass, but that was going to be it. That's all I would achieve. So when I went to that school, I suddenly realized it was my only opportunity in life. And it was the first time I'd ever been away from home, and I went into the school and I suddenly realized I'm not the only person that's dyslexic, neurodiverse. There are other people. And the teachers totally looked at things in a whole other angle, in a totally different way. And okay, it doesn't work for everybody the way they did things, but it definitely worked for me. And it totally changed the path of my life and altered it. So that's why I personally funded my co-author to physically write the book, because I wouldn't have actually physically written the book. I'm quite severely dyslexic, neurodiverse. And I also paid the two illustrators, Rossi Stone from Scotland and Rachel Crush, again from Scotland, to do all the illustrations in the book. And they did absolutely amazing illustrations throughout the whole book. The book is 150 pages. And let's see if we can find some parts. Yep. I've got a bit where I did it's a full-size 4-seater Model T Ford car cast in bronze. And I did that huge big sculpture. And Suzuki Stewart and Ford in America got involved, and I got a personal letter, not an email, a personal letter from William Clayton Ford Jr., Mr. Ford himself, actually wrote and followed the project going through to coming to completion. It took a long time to do. I did a piece for the man that walked on the moon, and it sits in the Scottish Parliament as well, the actual piece. And there was a gentleman who did the A to Z for the moon landing, Sir Patrick Moore, and I did a piece for him. And back in 2001, I think it was, AIDS came about in South Africa, and Nelson Mandela, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, and the South African government invited me and myself and a friend from Surrey over to South Africa, and I did a huge big sculpture, and the piece raised a lot of money to build a centre out in the bush for kids that were getting born with AIDS and their parents had passed away. So again, that's in the book. Throughout the book, as I said, a hippo, we used a hippo as the narrator, and it goes through the whole book explaining how the book runs. As I say, it's written in dyslexia neurodiverse font and laid out that way, and it explains about how a neurodiverse brain works, but try to do it in simple form that people can follow. Instead of turning around and I'm 100% of the book, we use different characters, and the different characters will, one's dyslexic, one's dysgraphia, one's just calcare, and that's the way we did the book right through. And then we've also got questions and answers at the back. I kind of dedicated the book to a person who was a massive influence in my life, who was Dutch and went through a huge amount. So I personally dedicated the book to Nell, who was Dutch, but lived in Surrey. Doing the book, it brought back an awful lot of memories for me personally, and it actually opened up a lot of things that I might also be mild autistic, I might be this, and various other things that I've gone through. And to actually be able to say that I'm an author of a book or co-author of a book is something I never thought I would ever achieve in my life, because yeah, I just never thought I would ever manage to do something like that. The royalties for the book, my royalties go to charity. So the book was never about making money. It's the same with the schools. Mostly for the schools, it's for underprivileged children. It's to try and give a dyslexic neurodiverse child around the world a chance in life to hopefully realize their own personal dreams and goals in life. I was given a break in life, and if I hadn't, yeah, my life could have been a whole lot different. So that is why I try and put back into society, and I try and help others. And I do quite a lot of different things. The book is available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and Waterstones and numerous other places. So there we go. That's enough about me.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for writing this book. I think, it's geared towards children. And I think it's important for a child who has neurodiverse issues or challenges, I should say, such as myself, to understand that what you went through and overcame. I think it's important for them to read that. I think it's also important from my standpoint, from a person who had ADHD and had similar situations that you did, to understand as an adult what was going on then back when I was a child. You never overcome that. You overcome it. You become a stronger person because of it, but it's always there in the back of your head, how you were treated as a child. So thank you. And I'm waiting for the movie, Mark. I'm waiting for the movie to come out.
We're looking at doing a musical at the moment. We're working on that at the moment to turn the book into a musical.
Very cool. And Dr. Sigamoni, you have your name begins with S, so you're last on the list, but that doesn't mean you're last of importance. So I'm going to turn this over to you to talk about your book.
No, thank you, Ken. So thank you for the opportunity. And so it was so nice to listen to all the presentations and to listen to everybody and, hear what Mark said, about how the system fails people. So, I mentioned these things many times and I don't want to repeat myself, but, to grow up in a working class environment is a very hard thing. And then to enjoy social mobility and then become to integrate with society in the South African context. It was like a very difficult experience, but I don't want to talk about that. So I listened to Mark and I could understand a lot of the things he says, and I think Dr. Martha Castella, I think Mark's book, and I think the others, I think the children in the schooling system need to look at this, and teachers, because they need to understand how people really feel, because sometimes as human beings, we become very mechanical and we don't really have the empathy that we're supposed to have for other human beings. And I think it comes out in those stories about the books. All the authors who presented, it's just a bit, it's so nice to hear what you have to say. So my book is contextualized within South Africa and the transition to a democracy. So I was part of the system. I mentioned other things about myself, which I don't want to repeat. But so the first chapter is about, why children struggle to read. And a lot of children struggle to read in South Africa. It's the majority of the population. So I tackled the problem. And I said that, it's about inequality. And we don't address the issues of social and cultural capital. We're not going to make progress with reading for meaning. And so this book has been about my personal life, basically, how I struggled in the system and how I struggled as an individual. And so I think that I talk about changing the foundation phase, where you provide the skills to children and you provide the theoretical tools for teachers to teach in the foundation phase and help these children with their personal development. And so I give guidance on pages 5 to 9, I give guidance to education departments about what they need to do to help children, poor children who come from poor townships and so on. And then in chapter 2, I ask the question, have we in inclusive education done the homework that people in special education have done? And people in special education exert the power and influence and separate people because they've done their homework. I'm not saying they're right, I think they're wrong. Because in South Africa, what the people with disabilities have said is that no, this special education system hasn't benefited us. So what we need to do in inclusive education is to do the hard yards in terms of developing theory and practice, and look at the curriculum and advance the curriculum in such a way that no child is left out of a school. Why should someone go to a special school? There's no special society. So those are the issues I raise in chapter 2. Then in chapter 3, I ask the question, is the bureaucracy the right tool or the right mechanism to address the challenges that we face in South Africa? Now, I've been to the UK, Mark, I've been to the UK. I've been to a few areas. My sample is too small to make generalizations, but I can say the problem that we have in South Africa, we have in the UK as well. And, I mentioned that I went to Philadelphia. I think the problems that we have in South Africa, we have on a bigger scale in South Africa, but on a smaller scale in the UK and on a smaller scale in the US. And I think one of the challenges is that the bureaucracy is too distant from the majority of people. And I think people have lost the connection with humanity. And I think the bureaucracy has lost the connection with humanity. And then in chapter 4 and chapter 5, I make recommendations about a social justice model. And Amartya Sen has done a lot of work in this. John Rawls has done a lot of work in this. And, I use Pierre Bourdieu's work in terms of cultural capital. And I use Bernstein's work in terms of the curriculum. And I think this is where I want to make a contribution in the future. I want to ask questions of the education system internationally, because I don't think, we have made sufficient advances in terms of our thinking and curriculum to embrace diversity. So why did Mark have to go to the school elsewhere? Why couldn't he go to the local school where people are able to embrace the difference, right? And where everyone is accepted in a school. And so I would like, I'm sure we all would like any education institution to embrace this diversity. So on Children's Day, I went to St. George's Cathedral. St. George's Cathedral, Mark, you may know, is very popular in Cape Town, because that's where Bishop Tutu and that's where all the struggle icons used to have their protest meetings. And so I used to attend those as well, but I was there recently for a Children's Day. And I heard a woman speak on Children's Day about children in the township. And she was very emotional and very animated, you know. And I thought, you know, I asked myself the question, you know, she must really be upset about the way children are treated in the townships in South Africa. And I try to bring this out in my book, you know. I talk about racial representation. I talk about the respect for humanity, that education is about love and humanity. And that we need to create a better world where we respect people, where we value people, irrespective of the difference and so on, but to see the divinity in human beings, and about providing the love and the service. So Ken, thank you for this opportunity. I think, you know, after I reflect on my book, I think, you know what, I really need to do more. I want to come, Dr. Castilla, I want to come to Mexico because I want to look at violence in children, and I want to see how we can help the children in the Cape Flats by understanding the impact of violence on children and drugs and alcohol, which is very common here. So that's my next thing I want to do, is to develop a very easy, hands-on book on helping children who are affected by adverse environments. And so I want to come to Mexico to talk to people, and talk to people at the universities, and talk to people at NGOs, and talk to people about how do we provide the skills to people who are not educated, not educated, but who didn't benefit from education. How do we help those children? And I also want to, with people like maybe the people that I meet here and other people, is to develop this practice of inclusive education. We know the theory. How do we develop this practice to give schools guidance across the world, and to give education departments guidance across the world? So thank you, Ken, for this. I really appreciate. I feel so good about being in the company of all of you who have this commitment to humanity. It's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Sigamoni, for writing this book. I think it's something that all educators should read. I think we welcome you to come down here to South America too. We'll get a translator for you. I think it's needed for the teachers down here to read your book also, because there's much in your book that could relate down there. As in addition, I would assume Dr. Martha would agree in Mexico too. It's a global thing, I think, that we need to get that word out on, and we will. So much appreciate all of you here. It's been a long meeting. I kind of knew it would be, but a very important meeting. And I would not like to end it here as far as these books discussions. I'm going to find a way. I know each book is so full of important information that we need to expand upon it. So it may be that we'll set up some sort of a streaming situation or something where we can have you do a reading, maybe a favorite part of your book on that streaming situation. We can talk about that. I wrote down a note that Dr. Doreen wrote. Something you said, Sigamoni, and that was quality education is a human right. We're going to be working on inclusive education. It's one part of what we're going to focus on. That could be a good thing. The quality education is a human right for everybody. So if anybody had any questions, I know it's been a long meeting. Go ahead, Mark.
It's not a question. I'm just about a week back from Singapore. They were saying about inclusive education, and I fully support that. It's not always the case in parts for different reasons. But if you're looking for a benchmark for around the world, Singapore are definitely the benchmark for inclusive education and dyslexia neurodiverse. They're very heavily supported by their government and various other institutions that are in Singapore. For example, they have got dyslexia neurodiverse centres in all the shopping centres throughout Singapore. And I went to the main one and I met the CEO of the dyslexia organisation there. And it's all the shops, and on the ground floor is a supermarket, but on the top floor there's offices, and they've got quite a number of offices. In this one that I went, they had over 600 children coming there. Monday to Friday, the children come between 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock at night, and then the place is open again Saturday, Sunday. So the parents come, drop their child off, dyslexic neurodiverse, or struggling with reading, etc., and then they go downstairs and do their weekly shop. So the child stays within school, and talk about just thinking outside the box. And there's lots of other things they do as well, and the trained teachers. Definitely, if you're interested in education, to see how other places around the world do it, Singapore is definitely a place to go and visit and see what they are doing, and it is quite astonishing. When I went to school, they turned around and said, and it was believed that it was only boys that got dyslexia and girls didn't. You only had about 1, 2, 3% of girls had dyslexia neurodiverse, and of course that's been proven to be totally wrong. And then again, everybody believes, well, most meetings I sit in, that it's mostly an English speaking thing, dyslexia neurodiverse, and Chinese definitely not, because of all the different figures in their letters. But and again, in Singapore, they've got a training program they've organized, and they've got 400 Chinese children, and this is no, totally wrong. It's a myth again. So as I say, that's your benchmark.
Well, thank you. You've generated 3 hands raised here, so let's kind of go through them. Jeremy Warner.
All right, thanks. I am not going to ask a question in the interest of time, but wanted to just comment that it's been great hearing about each of your books and your work. It would be wonderful to have a conversation sometime about what that process is, getting the books, getting from vision, well, even idea to vision to actually getting to where you're getting something edited and getting it published. Speaking as somebody who has a third of a book written about what my own personal experience is acquiring disabilities and the lessons learned, but that book ground to a halt years ago with life changes, and every time I've tried to pick it up, I've gotten maybe a page or 2 written a year. So it would be neat to have that conversation with those of you who have actually gotten the finished product out there at least once. So that would be neat to learn your thoughts on those things.
Sounds like a good idea. We can maybe come back and visit that. Masenga?
Thank you for granting me that a chance to speak. I'm very excited with the short summaries of the books that have been written. I wanted to just make one comment on Dr. Doreen's synopsis, especially that what she has written is real life. Sundiata existed in Africa. And what has pleased me most is that Sundiata survived because of his disability. Those who attacked the empire thought Sundiata would die naturally because he was with disability and his secret. Fortunately, the diversity made him survive, and he grew up a very strong character who became one of the great rulers of Africa. So I appreciate that. Coming again to Sigmane, I've liked the human rights approach to education. We have a lot of difficult questions on how we can uplift those from the urban places, especially the town poor. Nowadays, illiteracy is growing in towns because people migrated to towns, but they have not had good access to education. Indeed, inclusive education should advocate much on the human rights approach. Thank you. That's what I wanted to comment on. Thank you all.
I'm muted, sorry. Thank you, Masinga. Maybe you're going to generate Dr. Doreen a movie about this person. So who knows? Sayom
Hi.
from Sri Lanka.
This is just something to add what Mark said about Singapore. Because I just read his post soon after he left Singapore. So what he basically mentioned in his post was, Mark said, a good government support and a good commerce. So certainly Singapore is the benchmark for dyslexia, even for other special needs, because I was part of the Dyslexia Association of Singapore for 14 years. I worked from 2008 to 2022. And one point that I would like to elaborate, Mark said, all the business centers, or rather, normally in Singapore, you have the MRT, the speed railway station, and there is a big mall. Those malls, you have dyslexia centers, the community centers. So how it is possible? Because when people develop commercial properties, they are not going to give rent on low rent for charities. So what the government does is, when they approve the plans, they say, okay, we will pay you at the market rate, you reserve us 3 floors or 4 floors. Those are basically the community centers that is managed by government, where the rental is pretty much cheap. And Dyslexia Association has 14 centers in Singapore, where the Singapore is basically 750 square miles, a small country. Wherever you get out from a railway station, you have it. The same way the commerce. We normally do a lot of fundraising, approach the corporates, and they are always willing to help us because you get tax rebate. And over here now, I'm based in Sri Lanka, I'm a Sri Lankan. Here also we have with corporates the CSR projects. If we go there first, they will ask you a question which you can never answer. What are we getting from this? So what can we offer a special needs outfit to a corporate? So I agree with Mark, a good commerce and the government support is needed to the way forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Sayom. When Mark mentioned Singapore, I knew your ears went up because you've got such a long history of working in there, particularly with dyslexia. Mark, you and Sayom should get together probably and talk about things. Thank you all. If there's no other comment, I want to recognize our district governor, Joyce, who's been here throughout the whole meeting. Much appreciate you being here. She's the district governor of this club. And it's nice to see you, Joyce.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for wonderful presentations. And I've just got $100 worth of books in my Amazon basket. So I will read your books and enjoy them very much. Thank you.
I believe you're going to Kenya very
That's
shortly.
right. That's right. And I'm going to be visiting your school there.
And Anne as well.
Yes.
Anne's going to drive her to the school, Mark. So,
Wonderful.
yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, thank you all. Long meeting, but a very, very, very fruitful meeting.
Thank you.
We will continue this discussion with these authors because I think it's important. Each subject is important. So we'll work out some sort of form to do that. Much appreciated all. And gonna let you go. Thank you all for staying so long. And it's been live streamed too. So hopefully people have been watching it there. And I hope you all have a good rest of your day. And we're going to have, the club itself is going to have our annual meeting in December, which is December 23rd. Okay, be in touch with you all. Take care.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Ken.
Thank you. Thank you, Ken.
If I can figure out how to turn all these things off, I'll be fine.
Thank you.
Live streams off.